Good afternoon, everyone. I see that my sunshade is kind of in the way, but that's okay. We'll get on with it. Welcome. Did everyone have a chance to download the Google Doc and look at the information that was presented? I hope so. Um, One of the first things with an upcoming season of cold and flu, how your family reacts to cold and flu. And in the past, what type of medicine that you've used, etc. So in the Google Doc, I tried to give you the methods to make your own herbal cold and flu preparations. Everything from pastilles, which are pills, to cough drops, to cough syrup, which is the elderberry syrup. Um, can everyone hear me? I don't see any more chat. Cool. Okay. Um, the cough drops, the elderberry syrup, which can be used as a cough syrup, or when you see the first sign of something, feeling good, you take some of that 3 times a day. Um, what else is on that list? Garlic and honey. Um, in researching for this, I read that garlic and honey is an old wives' tale, but let me tell you that last winter, on Thursday morning, I woke up with a fever and a cold sweat, and I had blotches all over my face. And I hadn't been anywhere to catch anything. I hadn't seen anybody face to face, live to touch them or whatever for at least 3 weeks. So I had no idea why I woke up like that. But for 2.5 days, I couldn't get out of bed. I had a fever. I had chills and sweats and blotches, and I immediately went to my cupboard where I had a jar of local honey and garlic, and I took a tablespoon of that. I ate the garlic, I swallowed it all 3 times a day, and after 3 days, I was perfectly fine. You never would have known I was sick. Blotches gone, fever gone, etc. So I'm here to tell you garlic and honey does work. The key about preparing in advance is that you have the preparations made in your cupboard. So at the very first sign of a tickle in the throat, a runny nose, a little bit of a headache or tummy ache, or you just don't feel right, go get your garlic and honey. Take a tablespoon of elderberry syrup 3 times a day, and whatever was coming on may not come on. And if it does, it may be only of a couple of days duration as opposed to 4 to 7 to 11 days with cold or flu. Again, the key is to have it before you need it so that when you need it, it's ready to go. I see that Judy or Ruth Joy Muller is saying fire cider is it does look amazing. And it is also one of those remedies made in advance. It takes several weeks to cook in the background. Um, a tablespoon of that in a little bit of water 3 times a day. And believe me, whatever bug you have is going to run away. It is amazing. Oh, I'm glad you liked the Google Doc. I really tried to put everything into that anybody would possibly need. A little bit about fire cider. Fire cider is a folk remedy, and as such, folk remedies, things that have been around for hundreds of years, can't really be uh, patented. But somebody tried to patent fire cider, and Rosemary Gladstar, who had published the original uh, information on it and the recipe, she and several other herbalists and organizations got together and went to court and beat the guy who tried to uh, patent fire cider. She said it was the people's medicine, and the court agreed with her. So, what I have given you are some of my mentors and some of my teachers whom I have personally studied with, their recipes, them actually making the preparations. So it's just as if you and I are sitting in the same class, learning from the same wonderful teacher. Mountain rose herbs is a concern that I have bought my herbs from in the States for more than 20 years. And they were one of the very first concerns to go organic and to do fair trade in the herbs that they procured for their medicine. And I absolutely recommend them. Of course, the affiliate link that I've given you will benefit me if you choose to use them as an herbal source, but they are one of the very best, in my opinion. They normally have everything in stock, and if they don't, they can get it soon. I really should pull up that Google Doc, I guess, so I can actually see what I was talking about. Let me do that real quick. Okay, I've given you the Cleveland Health, the Cleveland Clinic information is the one that sort of poo-pooed the idea of garlic and honey. They don't totally dismiss it, but I gave it to you to be, honest and above board. The YouTube tells you how to make it. Echinacea is another wonderful herb. Again, it's the roots of the Echinacea purpurea that are what you want, but you can also use the flowers and the leaves. Doc Jones' website is absolutely amazing for information and classes on herbal first aid and becoming an herbalist or learning about herbs. He is one of my mentors, and I have taken classes from him. He's actually from Idaho, down in Filer, Idaho, which is at the bottom of the Snake River Plain, smack dab in the middle of the Snake River Plain by Twin Falls. And it's beautiful there, as you can see in the background of his video. Blue skies, very dry, but where there's water, there's lots of green. Another article from the Lancet on Echinacea, a 58% reduction in colds and actually getting the cold and or the duration of the cold lasting just a few days. I've included some information on cayenne pepper. A pinch of cayenne pepper in anything that you prepare will absolutely make the medicine go 10 times faster, farther, and really pack a punch. So if you really feel horrible, the more horrible you feel, the more cayenne you need. Be careful though, because it is a strong herb. I've given you Rosalie de la Foret's recipe and instructions on how to make pastilles, which are rolled herb pills in honey, so that you actually have something you can put in your mouth. And her recipe is also there for making cough drops. And some of you may shy away from using sugar, but it's the action of the sugar melting and the hardening that makes the cough drop. Anything else is just going to be a gooey mess. So if you don't eat sugar, make your cough drops out of sugar. You're not going to be sick that often. Enjoy yourself. Elderberry syrup, again from Mountain Rose recipe. Elderberries are absolutely amazing. They are one of the herbs in Charlemagne's list. People have used elderberries in Europe for centuries for herbal medicinal value. I've also given you Doc Jones's Herbal Cold and Flu Remedies class. You can see all of the lessons that are in that in his Herbal First Aid. When I first became acquainted with him, it was over snake bite, not for me, but for a dog. And his remedies were nothing short of amazing. And what will work on a dog will work on a person too, and vice versa. So his information is incredible. And last of all, I've given you the School of Traditional Skills, Herbal Protocols for Seasonal Allergies. That is a class created on the site for using herbs in combination. And she is a tea seller. She makes her own herbal blends, and she's absolutely wonderful. The School of Traditional Skills will cost you $29.99 a month. They have a deal if you buy a seasonal or a yearly annual pass, it's less, but they have classes on beekeeping, putting in a garden, slaughtering animals, making bone broth, making bread, um, sharpening knives, how to plan a homestead from siting the land to designing your buildings. They have everything imaginable by people who have actually done it, who know what they're talking about. And those particular classes, I highly recommend them. I have a yearly annual membership, and new classes I get automatically, but I can always go back and delve into what I needed to do, uh, dust off the books or whatever, and make sure. But it's a very marvelous resource for someone who's just starting out and who really doesn't know the ins and outs. They have the ins and outs of about anything herbal, gardening, animals, foods. They've got it. I highly, highly recommend them. Okay, let's look at the chat again. Grandmother kept a whiskey bottle in her cupboard that she said contained garlic and honey, mostly. Whiskey would actually make the garlic and honey go farther, but it would also, like Cayenne, the alcohol in the whiskey would make it really powerful when you took it. And I'm a firm believer of a good shot of something when you need it. There are times when you need it. And yes, good whiskey. I've never had any luck accessing Google Docs on Apple, so I'm listening. One Acre Farm, if you will send me a personal email to C as in cat, S as in Sam, Kizer, cskizer@yahoo.com, and put Google Docs in the subject line, I will send you the Google Doc as a Word file. Ruth Joy Muller is asking, when making garlic and honey, would you chop the honey or leave it whole? I chop it. In fact, I put my garlic on a cutting board and I smack it, break it up, and let it sit for at least 10 minutes. And then I chop it up. And the reason for doing that is because the allicin, which is the medicinal property in garlic, doesn't occur. It is a chemical reaction by breaking the cells of the garlic. So by smashing it or by putting it through a garlic press, and then letting it sit undisturbed for 10 minutes before you finish chopping it and adding it to whatever your stir fry or your honey, you will have more medicine, stronger medicine. And then when it goes to eating the honey and the garlic, I just take a tablespoon of the garlic and the honey, chew it up, swallow it. If you're sick, you're not going to be kissing anybody anyway for a couple days. So don't worry about garlic breath. Besides, it's not bad after it sat in the honey. Um, Animal Lover says, I don't get sick very much, but I get sinus infections and allergies. One of the good things about the garlic and honey is if buying local honey, where you live from bees who made it in the area you live is going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's worth every penny. The bees who live in the area where you live have been harvesting from all kinds of plants, and they're as a result, when they make honey, the process of making the honey sort of ameliorates the allergy component of the pollen that they're using. So now when you combine that with garlic and you let it steep or cook or macerate for several weeks, you have got strong medicine. It should help you with your allergies. If you have sinus infections, it should help with that as well. Um, One thing that's really good for sinus infections is a neti pot, Neti, and it is an apparatus with a spout on it, and you put a saline solution or an herbal solution in it, and you put it up your nose, and it runs out your other nose. So what it's doing is irrigating your sinuses and your nasal passages, uh, and uh, sometimes with sinus infections, your nasal passages and sinuses get really dry and irritated. So now not only do you have extra mucus and stuff going down the back of your throat, but whatever, it's dry too. And so your membranes really benefit from that washing out, that irrigating from the neti pot. Um, I didn't think about putting a recipe on the Google Doc. I can add that. But if you Google neti pot and recipes for use, you're likely to find some really good ones by good herbalists. Rick Flood says, dreaming of France. Neti pots must be completely clean. So clean, Mr. Clean would be jealous. Yes, I would boil it. I would insert it into boiling water for 5 minutes so that or if you have an autoclave, which not everybody has an autoclave, it will make sure anything that you put uh, in your body or up your nose is clean, because it will, the solution that you put in the neti pot will sort of like carry whatever's around the inside of it right up your nose. So yes, do be careful. Yes, Ruth Joy Miller says, Doc Jones talking about Cayenne. Haven't listened to all of it, but I'm blown away with what he has said so far. He is an amazing man. He started out as a veterinarian and then became a naturopath. So he's a certified herbalist, a naturopath, and a veterinarian. And he treats his animals as good as he treats his people, his clients, and he has exceedingly good success. He's a very good doctor. He's a very good veterinarian. He's a very good teacher. I highly recommend his classes. If you don't want to become a clinical herbalist and make your living as a clinical herbalist, his classes will give you the absolute foundation for first aid, uh, suturing, you name it, he's got it in there, um, and herbal information. You can become very adept in your use of herbs, not only for yourself, but for other people when it's necessary. But his classes are absolutely wonderful. One Acre Farm, you have to use distilled water, never tap. Agreed. Tap water is fine as long as you've boiled it and let it sit and get rid of the chlorine and all the bugs. But it has to be clean and hot. Not hot when it goes up your nose, but the water has to have been cleaned or distilled or boiled, and your apparatus that you use has to be clean and boiled as well. Mayberry Pandy says, thank you. As a young child, my grandfather used garlic and honey for colds, which never failed. I totally agree. My grandfather was born in France, and I remember um, my brother and I and mother lived with him from the time that I was 13 months until I was 12. And he had an onion sandwich, either with butter or mayonnaise, every single morning of the days that I lived with him all those years. He was never sick. He never had a cold. He never had a flu. He never had anything that was going around. When he was 94, he died of 4 different things: a stroke, a heart attack, and some other stuff. But it wasn't the common cold. It wasn't the flu. It wasn't run of the mill, whatever. It took a lot to kill him. And then he was so incensed with himself that he couldn't talk with anyone when they came to visit him, that when they left, he took the IVs out and the nurses didn't check on him all night, and he was dead in the morning. He didn't want to live that way anymore. But that's what it took to kill him. Boy, this is going to be a really short live, you guys, if I don't get some more questions. We don't have to talk about cold and flu. If you don't want to, we can talk about something else. What would you like me to talk about? Because you know me, I can yak on forever. Another thing to think about is your family is totally different than the family next door. You have different genetics, you have different environment, you eat differently, you dress differently, you clean your house with different products, etc. So the environment that you live in will either contribute or negate uh, the germs that come in your door and get you. As a result, your neighbor may prepare differently than you prepare for your family, but you know what in the past your family has suffered from. So those are the herbal preparations that you make first, something to ameliorate or mitigate those symptoms and illnesses. You don't have to have, when you open up the cupboard, you have everything like a drugstore. You don't need that much. You need what your family needs. Escape One Omam says, love my neti pot. I only wish I had discovered it a lot sooner. Yes, they are amazing. They really are. Any update to speak about my garden? Epiphany, London. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I am super duper glad that I didn't spend any money on seeds or plants and put them in the ground this summer, because they'd have been deader than a doornail. It has been so hot, unseasonably so, in France, and not enough rain, and everything is dying. I had to go to Ambazac, which is southwest of me, 90 kilometers or so, on Thursday, and it rained on the way down, but on the way back, I could see tree after tree after tree was dead. Plants were dead. The hedgerows were dead. It was horrible. And ponds that I went by, and lakes and rivers, there was hardly any water. I mean, we're talking, if you're familiar with Idaho and Lucky Peak Reservoir or some of the reservoirs in Idaho, when there's a drought, there's 50 to 100 feet between where the edge of the beach used to be and where the water now is. I mean, we're talking no water. And my garden would have died. Everything I put back there would have been dead. So I'm really glad that I didn't do anything. However, I am going to start scraping off the paths myself. I'm not going to wait for the benefactor. Good grief, what would I do if he didn't come? which you never know. So I have to go out there and do it myself. So I will be filming that and producing some videos on that. There's a lot of work to do, but the beds that are created and the overwintering with the lasagna type, the cardboard over the what's ever there, straw or hay and manure and black plastic over the top and let it go through the winter and compost, it will be perfect for spring. Elderberry wine having the same effect as elderberry syrup. I'm going to say yes to a certain extent, because drinking grape wine, it is the anthocyanins that give it the purple color of grapes, that is the medicinal quality of grapes, which is also in elderberries and blueberries and blackberries and mulberries and what else? Mahonia berries that I made my shrub out of. That purple color, the anthocyanin, is the medicinal that you're after. So yes, you will get some benefit from elderberry wine or cordial, but the syrup, when you make it the way the recipe calls for, will be much better. And then when you go to drink it, if you're really feeling poorly, put a pinch of cayenne in it and swallow it. And whatever's in your elderberry syrup will work 10 times better. Okay, I am going to recommend Animal Lover says, okay, what about I have one side of my body like knife is swollen, just started last year. Sounds to me like nerve something or other. I cannot legally diagnose or recommend, but I will highly recommend Doc Jones's YouTube video on Teasel, Teasel. It is an old herb, and it works not only on pain, but on nerve problems. He had good success with someone who had MS. He had great success with pain and with other types of nerve pain. So Teasel, and it can be taken as a tea. It can be taken as a tincture. The tincture can be rubbed on your joints or the side of your body that hurts. Spray it on. It will absorb through your skin and it will help. Okay, different subject. 1 Acre Garden. Orly, France Airport. I think on French Connections you mentioned. I would love to hear how you drove out of there. Logistics is what Francophiles want to know. Okay. After the fact, people were amazed, including the man who delivered my car to me, that I did not fly into Paris, Charles de Gaulle Airport. And I'll tell you why. I saw a movie with Liam Neeson, and his daughter in the movie and her friend went to Paris and got stolen for the white slave trade and drugged up. The friend died. He managed to rescue his daughter. But and this was before I ever even thought about coming to France. But I was very observant of what was going on in that movie. And I was very leery of the crowds and the pickpockets and the you name it, whatever I saw in that airport, even though, and this was Charles de Gaulle, even though it was a movie, okay, it made sense to be leery of that airport because of the amount of people that go through it. There aren't that many people that fly into Orly. And I chose to fly out of San Francisco, and French Bee was the airline that left San Francisco, and they flew into Orly. They did not go into Charles de Gaulle. So I got to Orly. I got on the plane in San Francisco at 8:30 at night. I got into Paris the next day at Orly at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The person with my car met me at the airport. I went to pick up my luggage. It never left San Francisco, but that's another story. It finally got to me, but not that time. And I got in my truck, or I got in my Renault Kangoo, and I drove out of the airport with GPS and headed south. And immediately outside of the airport was a McDonald's. So I stopped and got something to drink and got something that was new to me, which was goat cheese, deep fried goat cheese in a wrap with salad in it. I loved it. And I seriously thought about just sitting in that 24-hour McDonald's overnight and just sleeping in my car. I really did. But across the street from the McDonald's was a housing complex, and there were way too many young men roaming about. They weren't doing anything wrong. They weren't noisy. There were just too many young men. And when there's that much testosterone, it runs amok. So I didn't want to be anywhere near that. So I put my seatbelt on and turned on my lights, and away I went down the whatever it was, which was right there, literally within 150 meters. I was on the A going straight south, and I stayed on that till I got to Montluçon, got off the thing and turned right and went into Cruz, which is the next department over, and spent most of the night in Boussac. And the horrible green flashing cross on the pharmacy in the square in Boussac would not let me sleep. So I thought, to heck with it. So I turned on my lights and drove out of Boussac in the middle of the night and went to Cluniac, where I live, and pulled in and pulled across the street. And then I finally went to sleep. But logistics is, it's a piece of cake in Orly to get out of the airport. Now, if you're going north, like up to Flanders or Belgium, or you're going toward Brittany, or you're going east toward Alsace, I have no idea what the roads are like. But going straight south, it was either the A10 or the A14, piece of cake. Even in the middle of the night, and never having been on the road was great. It was just like an American road. The on and off and the plain air, which are what we would call a rest stop, were on both sides of the highway. I felt perfectly safe, absolutely perfectly safe, and capable of driving down the road in the middle of the night in a foreign country, not being able to speak the language. Didn't matter. I was in my car that was locked. I had gas in the tank. It was clear full, and I knew where I was going. So everything was fine as far as I was concerned. I would never in this house even consider putting in air conditioning. This house, because of the stone walls and the cross draft, there are transom windows above that door that you can't see. And the room next door has a window bank exactly like this, with a door that doesn't open and a transom above that door. And if I open both transoms and crack the back door with a chain on it so the local kitty cats can't get in, I have perfect air conditioning. In fact, even when it's 100 degrees outside, if I sit for a long time, I almost need to get a shawl to put over my shoulders, because little old ladies get cold across their shoulders, regardless of how hot or warm it is. Screens on the window are another thing. It's country, so there are flies. I hate them, but you get used to them as long as they're not crawling on the food. I don't care. I just get used to them. I don't have the windows open. I just have the transom, and it's open probably yay much, but that's enough to create a cross draft. And the flies pretty much stay on the windows, and then the spiders take care of them. Because boy, there are some big spiders in here. and they eat the flies. In fact, I sat there the other day, I was watching her do her thing, and she took 2 or 3 flies that she'd already eaten and crawled over and dropped them. And I thought she was cleaning house. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. What do I feel? Becca 720 asks, how do you feel about the quality of American food compared to what's locally available to you, especially thinking organically? The majority of the farmers around me do grow organically, and all of the local market fairs. The one here is in Busac on Thursdays from 8:30 to 12:30. Uh, the larger towns, Garay, Montluçon, all have. I imagine Gusan probably does too. Have local markets and beautifully arranged produce, absolutely gorgeous. Keeps very well. Um, Even when you buy it in the grocery stores here. Uh, your ability to buy organic is, you're not hindered in any way. The the strange thing I will tell you is I don't care where I have gone, what store, online, or actually gone into the store to ask and look, nobody has stock celery. They all have celeriac, which is the root, and they love celeriac, but they don't have the stock celery that we're used to in America that we chop up with onions and carrots and make mirepoix. They don't have that. I don't know why. Okay. Um, and I'm going to have to grow some of that because I like that flavor. It's funny because the uh, to the west of me in New Rochelle, when the people who left the Huguenots and the people who went to Nova Scotia and the areas where the Acadians are, and then from there to Louisiana. Um, Justin Wilson and his mirepoix of celery, carrots, and onions and green peppers. Um, I mean, how can you cook Cajun food without that? And Cajun is French, but I can't come by celery anywhere for love or money. Uh, Irene Ramirez says, I find that AYR saline gel really helps with my sinus dryness. It also will do the bottle neti rinse periodically. And yes, it's the saline solution in the neti pot going in your nose and out the other. The salt washes your nose, helps heal it, and helps decrease the inflammation. Question by Mary Reed. Are there any natural remedies for lowering elevated cholesterol levels? Uh, I assume you've been tested by a doctor who's done blood work on you so that you actually know you have cholesterol level problems. Um, Leafy greens, things that help with your liver. So anything yellow, like yellow dock, berberine, um, mahonia, Oregon grape, um, burdock, dandelion, um, any of those teas or roots or leaves and in stir fry will benefit you immensely. And it's not a thing. Remember when you take a pill that you get from the medical doctor, it is an isolated chemical constituent that doesn't have, and yes, it may have come from herbs, but because they have isolated it and removed the accompanying constituents around it, it comes with side effects because it's too powerful. You take a pill, and yes, it will do things to you, but it will also create side effects. When you take the food or the herb longer term, it because it has all of the other stuff with it, the fiber and the insoluble fiber and the probiotics and the prebiotics and everything that comes in it, it works. Your body has everything it needs to work to make it work and not hurt you. Sometimes medicines hurt you. Yes, they do something, okay, but they sometimes they hurt worse than they fix. Um, but yes, leafy greens, yellow and red vegetables, um, lots of water, and be kind to your liver. Do not detox. If your liver is not in good condition, or if you have gallbladder problems and you try to do a detox, it's like taking your liver and doing this to it. And stuff will leak out into your interstitial surroundings, and now your immune cells go into hyperdrive and try to kill everything off because they don't recognize what that stuff is. That's what happens when you try to detox without having fixed your liver first. Okay? So, quality food, good sleep, low stress, lots of liquids, me time. Get your body feeling good first, and then you can do gentle detoxes. And my gentle detoxes for things like cholesterol and all those other ails is 8 days of 1 lemon a day, the juice and the rind, and half a teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt for 8 days straight. Skip 3 weeks, do it again. Skip 3 weeks, do it again. Your body will remember when you go to the doctor and you have an infection or whatever, and he gives you a bottle of pills, he tells you take one 3 times a day for 10 days or until the bottle's gone. You don't normally refill the prescription for something like that. You don't just continue to take amoxicillin or penicillin ad infinitum. You take a course of it and then you stop, and then you go back to the doctor if you're not well, or you do something different. So herbs are the same way. Your foods are the same way. When you're doing something different to your body, do it for 8 days and then change. Either go back to what you were doing or do something different. Skip 3 weeks and come back to the lemon detox. Your body will thank you for that. And also, one of the things I want to encourage you is to think this: you cannot change what you cannot measure. What do I mean by that? Pretend you're in the hospital and you've just had surgery, and the nurse comes in and you're feeling like crap. And she says, her first question to you is, have you farted? And you look at her and go, how impolite can you be? She's asking you that because if the gases in your stomach, normally before you go into surgery, you haven't eaten. Okay. You may have even had lowered your liquid intake. So you have a dry tube now in there. And unless that tube is working again with, and gas and farts are what make it work, unless that is working again after surgery, she's not going to allow you to eat. Or if she does allow you to eat something, it's going to be practically non-existent food, because you've got to gently restart that tube action again. Where was I going with this? Okay, so she's going to write down on her chart, no, she farted, or yes, she farted, so I'm going to let her eat, and I'm going to recommend this, or the doctor said she could have this once she started farting. And she will ask you how many times you've gone to the bathroom. Was it number 1 or number 2? Do you have pain anywhere? Uh, how do you feel? Do you have a headache? Is your stomach upset? Uh, she will ask you all these questions, and she will write them down. So when you come to me as a client, I have you get up in the morning and blow your nose, and you're going to look at what you've got there in the hanky, And if it's clear and not full of dust or whatever, which means if it is, then that means the air in your bedroom should be filtered in some fashion because it's getting in your nose. Also, is it clear or is it sticky and yellow and green? Those, what you see indicates things. Okay, so you write that down. If you went to the bathroom, was it little turds like rabbit's let that are hard as a rock and hurt when they come out? Or is it a nice, long, snaky tube of poop? One is better, the other's worse, okay? So these kinds of things that you observe about yourself, if you're a mother, excuse me, you're going to be observing these things about your children, and you're going to be writing them down just like you're playing nurse, because they are symptoms or indices of things that are good or bad going on. Uh, so once you've started a chart for yourself and you know what you had to eat the last 3 days and what you're eating today and what you plan to eat tomorrow, and you've made notes on how you feel at the end of the day, uh, everything about physical feeling about yourself or your children or whoever, um, after your 8 days and you retake an inventory of how things are, you know whether you've gotten better or gotten worse because you had a measurement starting point. That's what a chart for a doctor or a nurse and your own self is for. You really can't just go in and start pulling stuff off the shelf and drinking it and assuming that's going to work. It may be the direct opposite of what you need, but you won't know until you have some data points to start with. John Gowan says, I'm using French Connections. Do you have a code ID that I need to give them? Yes. You will find it on my channel ID. If you can't find it, John, send me a email at csKizer@yahoo.com and put HBC in the subject line, and I will make sure that you get it. Let me go real quick and see if I can find it from the website. Okay, I'm going to put it in the chat. I hope it went in the chat. Yes. Okay. Let me pop this chat out so I can go back. The movie is Taken. Yes. That was a scary movie. I mean, I was an old lady already when I saw that movie, but I could see how easily bad things could happen to good people, and there wouldn't be a thing you could do about it. If you didn't have a knight in shining armor, i.e. your dad, who could come for you and had the moxie and the intellect and the skills to save you, I can just imagine what would have happened to that girl. Hello, Carolyn. I'm from the prairies, and rainwater is captured and stored for my garden. And if low pressure drip system has saved me and my garden immensely. Rebecca Lamb, are you in France? I have heard, I have a really good, gutter system that comes off the back of the Remedies and drips into it has created a hole. I would love to turn it into a little duck pond, um, and I would love to have one of those great big, huge, cubic, uh, water collecting things with metal reinforcement on the outside. I I heard somewhere, and I may have heard incorrectly, that the French, don't want you to have those because anyway, uh, I have a plan to get one if I can. I also share a well with the house next door, which is owned by the city, but I have not gotten into the well to see how deep it is. But I intend to put a submersible solar-powered pump in that well so that I can water things carefully later. But yes, I do want to install a drip system. My mailing address is 10 Rue, which is street, Martin Nadeau. Let me put it in the chat here. It's interesting. Martin Nadeau was a stonemason and actually ended up uh, being injured and learning how to having to learn how to do something else, and went into politics and became I'm not sure whether I can't remember if he was prime minister, but anyway, he was some high mucky muck in the French government. And he was from the Cruz area because of the granite that is here. And I live on the street named after him. I don't intend to ever go to Paris or a big city, i.e., bigger than Montluçon or Guéret or Limoges, possibly Clermont-Ferrand. I would drive on my own, and I would not do it at night, and I would park in the middle of the parking lot, and I would peruse the area before I got out, and I would although with the handicap sticker, I can actually park right up front. But I have no desire and no need to go to a big city. I would love to go to the Louvre or some of those other places, but I really, really, to get between here and there, it's perilous. Okay. Those bigger cities are, I left Idaho because there were too many people. I would not feel comfortable being there. But I would hesitate to get in a taxi anymore. Just I would. Ruth Joy Muller is asking, do you believe that your faith in God allowed you to buy the house you live in sight unseen? Yes, to a certain extent. Although, believe it or not, I didn't really pray about it. I prepared. I learned. I prepared. I knew I could do it, and I did it. It was legal. It wasn't too hard, and it was a challenge. Do I believe that he takes care of me? Yes, I do. Am I thankful? And do I offer thanks and ask for things? Yes, I do. But I also am a firm believer in God helps those who help themselves. And so I also don't ask unless I can't do it myself. If it's foolish or something I shouldn't do, I'm not going to bother asking. But I do believe in God. Um, I don't believe in proselytizing or preaching, although I'm sure I end up doing it some, and for that I apologize in advance. But no, uh, I've gotten myself into some really hot water and scary, strange places doing those things. Wasn't illegal, and I could, and I did, and I, kept on doing. And I have literally had to back out miles uh, out in the middle of the pucker brush and the boondocks that even the jackrabbits weren't there. So I have done some scary things, but I also know when to stop and turn around and go back. I don't think they grow the celery here. Uh, Although they would have to get the celeriac, but it may be that the celeriac is coming from a different type of celery than what we are used to as celery. They're really big on lovage, which is a sort of celery. Tastes terrible in my estimation, but it is a celery substitute. But I have seen seeds for wild celery, which I intend to grow, and there was some sort of celery in Charlemagne's plant list, but it doesn't look like stock celery that we're used to in America, where you go in and buy this big, thing that's this big around with leaves. We don't have. I have not seen that here. They don't. They look at me funny when I ask them for it. So, but isn't that strange, right? I agree. I don't know anything about celiac disease. I don't know anything about SIBO. I don't know anything about Crohn's disease. I do know that they are problems of the gut, either the middle, the beginning, or the end. And I do know that the gut-brain connection, uh, your brain has spent its entire life seeing through your eyes what's coming in on the end of your fork. And it knows before that food ever gets in your mouth whether it needs to send off the alarm klaxon or whether it can tell everybody it's okay, what's coming is good. When the alarm bells go off, it shuts down your digestion. So now if you continue to eat that, whatever it is, it sits in your stomach and rots, it doesn't digest. And then you've got this rotten mass going into your small intestine, and it's even more rotting, and etc. And because it's not digesting, it gets squeezed out through the leaky gut problem. And now you've got uh, your immune system goes into overdrive trying to kill whatever it is because it knows whatever's been leaked out is not supposed to be there. So it is said that Hippocrates said that all disease begins in the gut. He didn't say that, but he said something similar. And it's true. We know scientifically today that 99% of disease and chronic conditions begin in the gut. So that tells me, as an herbalist and as a mother and as a cook and a gardener, that I need to eat clean, organically grown, sustainably sourced uh, food that is, there's a book called 100 Mile Diet. Nothing you put in your mouth comes farther away than 100 miles. Well, that's a long ways in France. You don't have to go that far, 8 miles to Busac, and there's all kinds of farms right around here where you could literally go and knock on the farmer's door and ask for something if you needed it within 8 kilometers. So, or grow it yourself, which is ideal, but not everybody has a garden. So, if you eat right, if you eat in an anti-inflammatory manner, which means in today's parlance, that's a Mediterranean style of eating. But now the Mediterranean is a big place. We're talking Lebanese and Syrian and Moroccan and Algerian and French and Spanish and Greeks and what else is down there? Serbian and Croatia and uh, Egypt, Tunisia, Libya. All of those countries have not totally, they have similar diets because they are eating seafood, they are eating vegetables and fruits and wines, and some of them are eating wines, the Muslims are not. They're eating olive oil, and the further north you go, you have butter, but you're eating yogurt and good fresh eggs, honey. Um, so there's a list on one of my lives where I talked about anti-inflammatory lifestyle. You'll find some free resources and Google Docs to download information on anti-inflammatory. As long as you're eating off that list, doesn't matter how you cook it or how you combine it together to eat it, or what cuisine or style of cooking that you're eating from the Mediterranean, you will be eating good food. Eventually, your body will right itself as much as it can. Now, if you have destroyed it, either through no fault of your own or because you have eaten improperly for years, it will take long time to get it back in working order. But your body is pre-designed to heal itself as long as what you give it is good food, and it doesn't have to dealing with improper food to get rid of the problems that it causes before it gets its nutrition. Same thing for the bugs in your gut. If you're not eating enough fiber, then you're not feeding the gut bugs what they want to eat, and so they can't do their job. And they are the ones who are responsible for signaling the gut-brain connection to tell the brain that it's okay, that things are working just fine. Thank you very much. She's doing the right thing now. Or oh, she's still doing the wrong thing. I don't know what we're going to do, but I can't survive like this. And so you end up with all kinds of gut issues. So eat good food, eat clean food, eat anti-inflammatory food. And you have a huge, huge, huge selection to choose from. It can be vegan, it can be vegetarian, it can be pescatarian, it can be lacto-ovo, it can be red meat on occasion. I do not recommend the eating of pork and shellfish. If you have heart problems and you go to a cardiologist, first thing he's going to tell you to quit eating is pork and shellfish. Before anything else, he tells you not to eat that. Why is he telling you that? Well, I could say for religious reasons in my case. But there's something in those foods that are not good for you. And there are other ways to get fats, i.e. butter and olive oil. You don't need pork fat. You don't need juicy barbecue. You can learn how to cook with butter and olive oil and marinades and other things that make your meat juicy. You don't need pork. Now, you really can't go to a deli and get pate or liverwurst or something like that, even if it's the majority of it is lamb or duck or chicken, because they've adulterated it with pork fat or something else porky. So I make my own. Before I became vegetarian, I made my own. I made a killer pate. I made it out of lamb and chicken and turkey. Sometimes it had beef in it. If it needed extra stuff, I put butter and chicken fat in it. Wrapped it in beef bacon. I mean, it was tasty and yummy. Didn't need pork. Okay, I better look at my. And I apologize. I thought I had this fixed, but I don't quite. Becca 720 is asking, are there any upcoming festivals? Curious about the community engagement there. The first weekend of August was the Fête Patronale, which means generational festival. And so people who were born in Cluniac came back to Cluniac, and there was a parade, and there was dancing, and there was bonfire, and there was fireworks, and there were carts in the village square that you could go and buy ice cream and different kinds of food, or you could have in advance signed up for a dinner that they had. That happens in every village, usually sometime in August or sometime in July, August, September, in every village in France. My village, it happened to be the first week of August. When I first came in 2023, I had missed it by 1 week. It had just been a couple of days before. So I had no idea what I was missing, but it was wonderful. It's interesting when they have a wedding around here, you hear the beep, 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 beep coming, and the groom comes from one side of the village and the bride comes from the other, and they twirl around chasing each other in the city square. And then they go to the mairie, which is the mayor's office, and get married. And then they may or may not go back to the church in the square and have a religious ceremony. But not often do they have church ceremonies for weddings. It's normally through the mairie. And I think that's because of the French Revolution and the backlash against the church and the aristocracy. Having been there for a while, is there anything I wish I had done differently or before moving there? No. Other than knowing French better. That's the only thing. I haven't been studying French at all. I'm terrible. But thankfully, my age, it's not required as long as I continue to get a yearly renewal on my visa and do not apply for citizenship. I don't have to pass the French language thing. Now, I can speak enough French to ask for something, to say I don't want something, to say I live so and so, I need such and such. I can get by that way, but I cannot understand people talking on the phone. They talk so fast. I cannot, nah. But I do watch French TV and French movies twice. I watch it first with no closed caption, and I listen to the sound and I watch their mouth. And then I turn it on and I put the captions on in my language. And then I'm not really reading it, but I'm listening to what I'm hearing, again, watching their mouth and the words coming out. And I sort of see what it is in English. So I'm okay. And I do listen to tapes at night before I go to bed and when I get up in the morning with French conversation, which helps a little, but not a lot. My problem is, as old as I am, when I learned how to read and write in the early 50s, it was phonics. And in America, in speaking English, you pronounced every letter. unless it was silent E. And in France, the word could have 15 letters in it. You only say 8. My English American brain tongue just cannot wrap around that. I don't know. I'm trying. I would love to get monetized soon. I got an email before I came on live that said I had been denied again. So, and it gave me a whole long list of stuff that I had to go fix. I have no idea. I'll worry about that tomorrow. This is just absolutely terrible. Let's see if we can do that. Animal Lover says, I have traveled some and I hate coming back to America and the food is all the same, not the same. I get so disappointed. I don't eat out much anymore. The flavors aren't the same. It's true that in France, the flavor is amazing. Part of it is because of all the steps and the techniques that they use. And now that I'm vegetarian, the techniques are even more important. For instance, browning your vegetables, roasting your vegetables till they get a little bit of brown so that you have a little bit of crust in the bottom of the pan or a little bit of fond in the bottom of the skillet that you need to get up by adding a little bit of liquid, which can either be jam or wine or broth or liquid or whatever, and you scrape it up. Same with the roasted vegetables. It's the caramelization and the different steps in the cooking. That's where the flavors come from. So if you're not going to a 5-star restaurant in America where the chef prides himself on the technique of the food, it's difficult to achieve flavor without a lot of additives or flavor enhancers or other things, which is why processed food is so addictive and tastes so good, is because they have spent billions of dollars figuring out how to trick our palate and our brain to the salt and the sugar flavors really set off stuff in our head. It's really hard to turn it off and not just eat one, as they say with Pringles or Oreos. Celtic sea salt. Is Celtic salt good? Yes, it's a natural salt. I just happen to prefer the Himalayan salt because of the extra minerals that are in it. But yes, 50 years ago, I flew over Great Salt Lake from Boise to Salt Lake, and there are settling ponds around the edges of Great Salt Lake that Morton Salt Company owned the shore. And they would put different chemicals in the different settling ponds. And as you flew over, they were chartreuse and purple and crimson and you name it. And depending upon the chemical that they put in the salt water, it would precipitate out a particular mineral. So sea salt, I would never eat Morton salt again because I wouldn't be able to trust it because of what I've actually seen them doing. But when you are actually mining salt from the shore in, for instance, the Camargue down in south of France in Provence, or up in Malden sea salt in Britain, or in the salt marshes there, or along the Brittany and Normandy coast where they have salt marshes, and they're actually harvesting the salt, that salt would still be good. And that's what your Celtic sea salt is because of the minerals. that are in the ocean that are with the salt. Hello, Simply Idaho, shirt tail cousin that you are. Okay. Thank you guys for all of your good wishes. I'm nobody special. I'm just willing to learn, prepare, and jump. It doesn't make me brave, or sometimes it makes me foolish, but I just do it anyway. Herbal teas can benefit your sleep, uh, depending upon the herb that you drink. I would highly recommend that the older you are, that you don't drink liquid after 6 o'clock at night. And if you do drink your herbal tea and you go to bed at 10, I would drink my herbal tea at 8 o'clock. I wouldn't drink it any later because you will end up peeing all night long. Herbs, uh, herbs are made to work with your body and help it flush and be moisturized. And in order for it to be moisturized, where it's wet, it has to come over to where it's dry. And so it's that movement of the liquid through your body and your tissues that makes you have to pee. So depending upon your age and depending upon the herbs that you drink in your tea, um, be aware of that. It you'll just kind of have to play with it and go up and down and figure out what works best for you. Lavender and chamomile are really good nighttime beverages, as is verbena. Um, I'm trying to think of what else is in my sleep tea. Last week on the live, I believe there was an Aviva Ram uh, sleep tea in the information. I highly recommend that sleep tea. It's really good. But again, I never drink it after 8 o'clock at night. Oh, someone in the chat says you can get celery in France. So I'd love to know where. Or maybe they call it something different, but I go in and I describe it. I even have a picture of it. And they look at me like I'm from outer space. So I don't even ask anymore. Elizabeth Mencia is asking, do I know what part of France most of the Cajuns came from? The Cajuns are transplants from Acadia. When the French and Indian War was over, the Brits now ended up with French Canada, and particularly in the Maritimes, and they kicked the French out. Remember the story of Evangeline and how she and her family were put on a ship and shipped to Louisiana? That's where the Cajuns come from. It means Acadian. It's a short form of Acadian. Yes, some of the Cajuns in Louisiana today are mixed in with other races, but I think you're thinking of Creole, and Creole is Creole, is a combination of French food cooked by Africans, i.e. the African slaves that they had in French Louisiana. They put their own spin on it and brought in things like okra and peanut soup and some other really good food, but unknown to the French. So Creole and Cajun, yeah, Cajun is a short form of Acadian, and it's speaking about the French who were deported from the Maritimes in Canada after the French and Indian War in the mid 1700s and shipped south into Louisiana. South Loop River Homestead says, for SIBO, Dr. William Davis L. Ruteri suggests fermented yogurt. Yogurt is very good for you. If you do not have a dairy issue, in other words, you can your body will accept dairy, then the more fermented it is, the better. We're talking buttermilk, we're talking yogurt, we're talking fermented cheeses. Yeah, they're good, very good for you. Okay, Elizabeth Mencia is asking for my pate recipe. Pate sounds so much better than liver. Oh, I love chicken liver pate. Yum, yum, yum. Excellent stuff. But yes, if you want, okay, Elizabeth, put yes or no in the chat. Do you want my vegetarian, not my vegetarian, do you want my non-pork recipe for pate with a lamb and chicken and or beef? And yes, I will do that. Donna Applequist asks, good morning, Carolyn et al. I recently bought a natural healing book, but I am very confused which coconut oil to choose. Any advice? Coconut oil is normally a hard fat. If it's been fractionated, it has been turned into a liquid oil, and I don't know, I forget what the process is, but they've done something to the coconut oil to turn it from a hard fat to a liquid fat and to stay in a liquid state. A lot of cosmetics use fractionated coconut oil. I have seen aromatherapists and herbalists recommend fractionated coconut oil or almond oil or avocado oil, jojoba oil, to make your herbal oils with. So either one of those would work. I used hard coconut oil in my face cream that I made a couple videos back. Tax Girls 164 says, Donna, raw coconut oil, 100% organic and unrefined is what I use for cooking. Yeah, it comes in a tub and you just scoop it out. It looks like lard, kind of. And you scoop it out with a spoon and put it in the pan and it melts and you cook. You could use it in biscuits like lard or Crisco or whatever. It would work the same way. Yeah. And she says also use MCT oil to make bullet coffee. And if you're not sure what bullet coffee is, the caffeine in coffee normally makes you have a caffeine jump in your blood system. But if you drink your coffee with a bullet, i.e. fat, as in butter or ghee, or as Donna Applequist says, or Tax Girl says, MCT oil, those will cause your caffeine spike to be something like this. So the benefit that you get from the caffeine, i.e. the wake up, feel good, feel alert type feeling, will last longer and will not be something like this. You won't crash. And when they began to drink coffee originally in Ethiopia, they drank it with fat. That was how they prepared it, was with fat of some sort. Becca 720 asks, how about things like apple festivals or strawberry festivals, which are popular where I live in New York? Yes, they do have such things. Blueberries are very big around here. Someone is making blueberry wine, and there is a winery that is making non-sulfite wine. I'm trying to think of there are agricultural festivals where people come in and show their sheep and cattle and goats and horses and that sort of thing. In fact, this weekend in Busakburg, there's uh, a circus, and they sent a little yellow van around all over the place, every day, and he would run through the streets and he would Busakburg, Busak, they come to the carnival. Basically, was what he was saying. So yes, they do have that sort of thing. I normally don't go. Um, but they do have them, and they're lots of fun, and they're usually advertised in advance, and there are lots of brocants in some of the larger villages and other areas around, and people who are really, excuse me, big into brocants run a circuit, and they come home with what they call their hauls, and they really end up with some cool stuff. Donna Applequist. So a recipe calls for coconut oil. It is okay to use only MCT, or should it be used with coconut oil? Um, they're both basically the same thing. They're just in a different form. I do drink French wine, and I absolutely love it. I have actually asked for celery and branches, uh, but it's not sold in my local supermarkets in Montluçon, Garay, or Busac, the two stores in Busac. They have no clue what I'm talking about. So if I were to go buy it, and I haven't seen it in the fresh air markets either. So if I were to get it, I probably would have to go to Limoges to get it, which is 100 kilometers. Gail PR asks, are you able to get a wide variety of fresh fruits, berries, melons, etc. at your weekly market? Yes. Incredible. I had a melon the other day that was just exquisite. It was absolutely marvelous. Birch Tree Art says shellfish like shrimp and lobster are high in cholesterol. That's why not recommended for heart problems or heart patients. That's true. So if they're not recommended for heart patients and they're high in cholesterol, why would you eat them to begin with? I mean, I'm sure they taste good if you're used to eating them, and you probably would miss them if you didn't eat them, but there are other things that are much healthier for you. Yes, I will provide the non-pork pate recipe. Rebecca Lamb says, I started a garden spot 7 years ago, and it took me a month to comb through and dig out the quack grass. Seasonal gardens grow abundantly well. I ferment cabbage and some vegetables. I think you might find that quack grass might even be medicinal if you looked hard enough. But yes, it is something that's difficult to get out of your garden. What are my favorite uses for cinnamon? Montandon Watch History says. I am very fond of cinnamon, cayenne, and cocoa powder mixed together in my coffee. A spoonful of that. Love it. It's also in Ras El Hanout, which is a Moroccan spice that it means top of the shop, which means a little bit of everything, sort of. And every spice merchant has a slightly different variation. But really like cinnamon in with cocoa or with coffee. And so I have a triple whammy, for quadruple whammy with cayenne, cinnamon, cocoa powder, and coffee. I also swallow the coffee grounds and the cocoa sludge in the bottom of the cup to feed my microbiome. As far as I'm concerned, I'm giving them a micro salad. Lady Time says, I use jojoba oil in most of my beauty and topical care products. It is shelf stable for a very long time. Yes, that is true. It is a very good oil. A little more expensive than some, but it is a very good oil. Oh my goodness, I have gone an hour and a half again. You guys, how do I manage to do that? Okay, I'm going to have to call a halt to it, mainly because the sun is just terrible. And I am working on fixing that. Um, yes, I whisk the spices into my coffee. Um, what do I know about castor oil? The only thing I know about I know two things. Castor oil is where they get ricin poison and ricin gas. Castor, it comes from the castor plant. But castor oil is supposed to be phenomenal, according to the internet gurus currently, for all sorts of things. I have been too busy to research it, so I really don't know, other than I have seen it touted for skin and for other things. I do know that for female problems, rubbing castor oil on your belly and putting a hot water bottle, a flannel cloth and a hot water bottle on your tummy is supposed to work wonders. But I haven't tried it. So I'm going to call it a quits. I will type out the pate recipe and I will put it in the um, description of this video. And I will tell you where the original came from with the pork in it. So if you do eat pork, you can go get the recipe. It's absolutely a fantastic recipe. I highly recommend it. And I hope that I helped with the uh, cold and flu. The information on the handout it's worth its weight in gold, and the teachers and the sources that I gave you are the absolute best available. Lemon and salt detox. It's a piece of cake for 8 solid days. Once a day, either morning or night. You take the juice of an entire organic lemon and a half a teaspoon of sea salt, whether it's Malden, Celtic, or Himalayan sea salt. And you drink that. Then you take the rind of the lemon, the entire lemon, and you slice it up, you grind it up, and you put it in your smoothies or in your salad dressings or in your stir fry for the day or your soup or whatever. But I want you to eat an entire lemon rind and juice with the salt once a day for 8 days, then quit. 3 weeks go by and you can do it again. And 3 weeks go by and you can do it again, but never do it for more than 8 days. The reason I say that is because it is a very effective, gentle detox. And you do not want to force your body into constant detox. Remember the squeezing of the liver, wringing it out like a sponge and squeezing all the gunk out into your system? You don't want to do that. You want to gently do it. I've done my second round of the 8-day lemon regime. Very happy with that. Thank you. Thank you. It worked for me. It did wonders. I had a yeast infection that I got when I went to a reenactment in central Illinois, or no, Ohio. And I could not get rid of it for 7 years. We moved from Illinois to Michigan, couldn't get rid of it. Moved from Michigan to Alaska, couldn't get rid of it. Moved from Alaska back to Idaho, and I heard about the lemon and the salt, and I tried it. Now, I wasn't trying it to get rid of the yeast infection. I had just heard that it was good for you. So I did it for 8 days. And on the 8th day, I didn't have the yeast infection anymore. And it has never come back. And those of you who have had yeast infections of any type, and you've gone to the doctor and you've had antibiotics and you've tried everything and nothing works, the lemon juice and the salt worked for me. I wasn't going for that, but that was the result. I have UTI and I'm on antibiotics. Do you have a suggestion for getting gut health back? Yes. Anti-inflammatory foods. Nothing in your mouth, up your nose, or on your skin is anything but edible, anti-inflammatory foods and oils and smells. It will take anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months, and you should see some major improvement. You should sleep better, your gut should be better, your stress level should be down. What more can you ask for? Okay, I must go, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And before I go, in the chat, what would you, or I'll do a post and ask you what you'd like to talk about next week. I'm going to do a chat from now on every Sunday at 4 o'clock. And I'm going to fix my sun problem here so they turn out better. But I want you guys to know how much I appreciate the fact that I'm not if I'm ever afraid of anything, it's to get online on camera and talk to people. And I'm getting over that. Okay, right? So I have you guys to thank for that. So thank you so much. And see you next week.